Some people wake up and feel that the day already has a shape. Others wake up and feel pressure before they have even done anything. They are not looking for a to-do list. They are looking for a reason. And that difference matters more than it first appears. By the end of this video, you will understand what Ikigai really means, why it is much broader than a single career goal, and why modern life can make that kind of meaning harder to feel. We will look at three things: what Ikigai means in ordinary Japanese usage, how earlier Japanese thinkers described it as a lived feeling, and why the modern search for purpose often becomes more confusing than useful. Welcome to Mini Mind Hack. Many people feel that life should have a deeper point. They do not necessarily want a grand mission. They want something that makes the next day feel worth entering. In this video, we will look at how Ikigai works in everyday life, why it is not just about success or productivity, and how people build a sense of meaning through ordinary repetition, not just through rare achievements. Start with the word itself. In Japan, Ikigai is a broad idea. It can refer to people, work, hobbies, responsibilities, or everyday activities that bring value and joy to life. It is not limited to one dramatic life purpose. It can be something as ordinary as caring for someone, tending a routine, or returning to a task that feels worth doing. That matters because many people outside Japan hear the word and immediately think of a perfect life mission. A single answer, a single calling, a single thing you were born to do. But that is already a distortion. Ikigai is often quieter than that. It is less like a revelation and more like a thread, something you keep returning to because it makes life feel possible, and not only possible, but worth continuing. One of the most important modern writers on the topic was Mieko Kamiya, a Japanese psychiatrist who published her book Ikigai ni Tsuite in 1966. Her work is often treated as foundational for modern psychological discussions of Ikigai. She wrote after years of clinical work, including work with leprosy patients, and described Ikigai as something tied to the feeling that life is moving forward, even when present circumstances are difficult. That is a very different idea from a motivational slogan. It is not saying, "Be positive." It is saying something more practical. When a person can connect the present moment to a valued future, the present becomes easier to bear. That is why Ikigai is not only about excitement, it is about continuity. A person may not feel inspired every morning, but if they know they are returning to something that matters to them, the day becomes easier to enter. That thing can be large or small. It can be a child, a craft, a garden, a line of work, a weekly gathering, a quiet responsibility that would be invisible from the outside, but deeply real from the inside. This is where another modern writer, Ken Mogi, is useful. Mogi is a Japanese neuroscientist, and in the Little Book of Ikigai, he presents Ikigai not as a grand abstract destiny, but as something rooted in ordinary life and repeatable joy. His emphasis is on the small, lived things that keep a person connected to the day. That is a helpful correction for modern audiences. A lot of people spend years searching for a life-defining answer, when what they actually need is a reliable sense of return, a reason to get up, a reason to continue, a reason to do the next ordinary thing without feeling lost inside it. And here the research becomes interesting. Ikigai is not just a poetic idea. In the Osaki study, Toshimasa Son and colleagues found that people who reported no sense of Ikigai had a higher risk of all-cause mortality. The study does not prove a simple cause and effect story, but it does show that a sense of life worth living is not just a philosophical luxury. It is tied to real-life outcomes. More recent work points in the same direction. A 2022 study on Japanese older adults found that having Ikigai was associated with lower risk of functional disability, fewer depressive symptoms, greater life satisfaction, and more frequent social participation. Again, this is an association, not a magic formula. But it supports the idea that meaning is linked to how people actually live over time. That is important, because modern life often frames purpose as if it should arrive fully formed. Find your passion, find your mission, find your calling. But real life is usually slower than that. For most people, meaning does not appear as one perfect answer. It accumulates, a routine that holds, a person you care for, a skill you keep returning to, a task that feels quietly necessary, a way of living that gives the next day a shape. This is why Ikigai can be so easy to misunderstand in a fast, overstimulated world. Modern life keeps pushing us toward comparison, optimization, and visible success. It asks for speed. It asks for clarity. It asks for a neat explanation of why your life matters. But Ikigai is not always neat. Often, it is something smaller and more stable than the version people are taught to expect. It can be the reason you make tea in the morning, the reason you answer a message from someone who matters to you, the reason you continue a craft even when nobody notices, the reason a day feels less empty when you have something to return to. That is why Ikigai matters. Not because everyone needs a grand destiny, but because without some form of return, the days begin to feel interchangeable. And when that happens, the question becomes less, what is my one true purpose? And more, what keeps my life connected to itself? That is a much more realistic question. And for many people, a much kinder one. So if Ikigai feels difficult to find, that does not mean you are failing at life. It may simply mean you have been trained to look for something too large when what you need is something lived, ordinary, and repeatable. Thank you for watching Mini Mind Hack. If this helped you see the idea more clearly, you can share your thoughts in the comments or subscribe for more calm, research-based explorations of the mind, identity, and meaning. See you next time.